Is it recording?
It's streaming, yeah. You're
Cool. Hello. Let's see. There's 3 of you. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Let me make sure I'm looking in the right place. If you guys are here, if you could just mention in the chat box so I know who is here, that'd be awesome. And we'll get started in a minute or so. Allie, I'm assuming that means that you're here. And we'll see how long the lag is too. For this stream today, there's things that I'm going to be putting into the chat box also that you guys can copy and paste. At least I'm going to attempt to do that. It might not work, but we'll try. Okay, Hannah's here, but she can't comment. All right, good to know. We'll make sure that no one emergency texted me. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to give some instructions then right now. As I think I said in the Schoology assignment, we're going to be reading through chapter 2 together. I know you guys already read it once, and then we're going to be going over some of your questions. So I'm going to read through it just pretty much straightforward, and then I have in my notes your questions that I believe are pertinent to what we're doing. Emma and Sequoia are trying to see it. I don't know what that means. So as we go through, cool. So the live stream link should always be the same. It's just my YouTube account, because now I have a YouTube account for doing this stuff. So it will just be, I would just bookmark that so that you guys have it every single time. Now the Zoom calls, I will always post those like a half an hour or so before, hopefully earlier. But for these live streams, it will always just be the exact same thing. And then you'll just click on the live stream one. So, I don't know why people are having trouble joining the stream today. I don't know if my husband needs to come and help, but it says that there's 6 of you. Sequoia, Emily, Allie. I'm sorry you guys had a hard time. I don't know what was going on today. We were having some troubles here as well, so I don't know why it was like that. But I'm glad you guys are now able to see things. You can help each other out if you need to. So, here's what we're doing today. You guys have your notes that you asked questions. You asked 3 questions. You made 3 observations. Everyone who turned them in by 11, I have already graded those. You already have points for doing that. What you're going to do is have open that document, and underneath it, you are going to then be taking notes on what we're doing today. Then the the assignment will be re-uploaded for more points. So you're not having to do a whole nother document, like a whole other thing. You're just using the same one that you already had. Thanks. Okay, Emily, thank you for sending the link for everyone, for making that easy for people. So that's what you're doing. If we go over your question, if your question is answered, then you will obviously just answer it underneath your question that you asked on your assignment. If there's a new question, then you will add that to the bottom of your notes. So in your notes, you'll have your observations, your questions, the assignment you just turned in today, and then you'll have the notes from today. So that's what we're doing today. First, though, I am going to read through Ruth chapter 2. It would be helpful if you read along too. I know you've already done it, but it doesn't hurt to do it again. So that is where we're going to start. Can we write on a piece of paper? It will be difficult to do that. You can, but it will be probably harder to take notes that way. But you can. Then just know when you upload it, you have to upload that image. If you're ever uploading images, like handwritten stuff, it has to be in a JPEG or a TIFF file. I don't know, there's this weird HEIC thing. I can't open those files. So if you're gonna upload handwritten notes, if I say that's okay, which sure, I will say that's okay. I'm just saying it might be harder. It has to be a JPEG or a TIFF file. Just so you know, because otherwise I can't open it and I can't give you points. Okay, so we are in Ruth chapter 2. Hopefully you guys have your Bibles and your assignments and things like that with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through it, and then we'll get to your questions. Okay, so the title of this chapter in the Bible I'm reading from right now says, Ruth gleans in Boaz's field. So verse 1, Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, Go, my daughter. So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers not being like coming to kill you reapers, like reapers in the field, "May the Lord be with you." And they said to him, "May the Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" The servant in charge of the reapers replied, "She is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. And she said, 'Please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves.' Thus she came and has remained from the morning until now. She has been sitting in the house for a little while." Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" Boaz replied to her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward you for your work, and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your sight, my lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants," as in she wasn't actually one of his paid maidservants. She's just some random lady. At mealtime, Boaz said, "Come here that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied, and had some left. When she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also you shall purposefully pull out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Then she took it and went to the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took it out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied, so like from lunch or whatever. Her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I worked today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." Again Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me, 'You should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field." So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Okay, so a lot happened in that chapter, like a whole lot. If you guys have questions not related to Ruth, please ask me another time. Like there's a question about Google Docs, so you can ask me whatever, but right now we're focusing on Ruth. So you guys asked some really good questions and you made some really good observations. What we're going to do is go in order. I didn't get to every single person's question, but actually pretty much most of them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read the question. If I'm able to, I'm going to type it into the text box so you guys can actually just copy and paste it into your notes if that's easier for you. So we're going to try to do that. I'm going to put this here. Hi, Bible. Okay, so the first question that you guys asked was from verse 1, which makes sense, which was when it says a man of standing, and it said different versions of this in different translations of the Bible. I'm not sure what that means. So what does that mean? There you go. So that's in the chat. Now you guys can copy and paste it for your notes. So when it says a man of standing in verse 1, what does that mean? So in my version, which is like, New American Standard Bible, which I know probably not most of you have, it calls Boaz a man of great wealth, I think. Yes, it calls Boaz a man of great wealth. My ESV version, I think, called him a worthy man. There's other versions. If you guys have another version, if there's another word you want to throw into the chat, then you can do that. All this is trying to say is that they're just describing him. They're describing his character and what he's known for. So yeah, that's what that means. But what else should stick out to us then in the first verse? It says, "Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth." So we could pay attention to the honorable man, great wealth part, but the most important part here is that he is a relative of Elimelech. Like that, is a big deal. The author of the book of Ruth here is just describing him. He's like, it's like a narrator. So you can think of it like that. It's not, Naomi's not writing this part. Ruth is not writing this part. The narrator, who knows the entire story already, is writing this part. Like you would think like a fairy tale, like once upon a time in a castle far away lived a princess or whatever. Like the princess isn't talking about herself, and neither is her, I don't know, friend or Prince Charming or whatever. Someone is just referring to who this person is. Can you spell the E name? It's Elimelech. Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that. It is in your Bible, so I would encourage you actually to have your Bibles open so you can have it right there. So yeah, Elimelech. Who is Elimelech again? That's Naomi's husband. So that means if he was a relative of Elimelech, that means he's technically related to Naomi by marriage, so that they're also relatives. So that's why it says Naomi had a kinsman. Okay. Verse 2, you guys asked, which I was hoping you would, and there's like 3 of you that asked this. What does it mean to glean? Why do they use the word glean so much, and what does it mean? And then someone said, I was wondering if it was a harvesting term. So, to put that very simply, glean, what does it mean? And this is in verse 2. What does it mean to glean? Okay. Yes, it is a harvesting term. So I keep cutting my face off. Good job. Yes, I mean, we probably could infer that based on all the talk of harvesting and gleaning and grain and all those things. But yes, it's a harvesting term. So I'm going to read it straight from Wikipedia for you guys first, and then I'm going to actually give you the verse that refers to a lot of what was actually taking place in this chapter, and different things that these people met the men and Boaz were doing in order to honor Jewish law. So from Wikipedia, it says, gleaning is the act of collecting leftover crops from farmers' fields after they have been commercially harvested, or on fields where it is not economically profitable to harvest, like they're like the leftovers. If you want to look it up on Wikipedia and copy and paste that part for your notes, totally go ahead, do that. I got it straight from Wikipedia too. That's what I did. But then I'm going to give you a verse too, which you can also look up and copy and paste if you would like. So it is a practice described in the Hebrew Bible. This is still from Wikipedia. That became a legally enforced entitlement of the poor in a number of Christian kingdoms. So we've heard it said all the time, God cares about the poor, Jesus cares about the poor. There was a law, actually multiple laws, but this is just the one about grain, where these men who had these barley fields, wheat fields, whatever, just grain, they were not allowed to pick it to the bone, basically. They had to leave some left over for the poor. So the poor could come through the fields and take what was left over so that they would not starve and die, so that they could provide for themselves or their families. That was a law, that if the men who owned the fields or who harvested the fields as workers did not do that, that they would be actually punished by law, by Jewish law. So yeah, God cares about the poor so much that he actually had them make a law for this. And so that's what Ruth is doing. She knows about this. Naomi knows about this, obviously. They're poor, like we've talked about. They have no means of income. They really have no means of food, except for the people that decide to take pity on them and give them stuff. And so she's going out to the fields to glean, because that's what you do if you don't have a means of food. So she was doing that. The law is found in a few different places, but the most succinct one I found is, oh yes, I definitely can. Leviticus 23:22. I'll type that into the chat box. And for the last part, I'm just kind of explaining like what I said was on Wikipedia. You can just copy and paste that. You don't need to add a whole bunch of other stuff too. So as I'm talking a lot or talking fast, you don't need to write all of those things down. I will tell you when you need to write like a whole entire thing down. Take as many notes as you can. But for the gleaning question, you just really need to know what it is. And that's from Wikipedia. And then the verse that I'm going to give to you guys, it's Leviticus 23:22. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God. So that is a direct command from God through Moses to the people of Israel. So Ruth is both the poor and the foreigner living among them. So this definitely applies to her. And she, again, is aware of this. So that is what it means to glean. And so hopefully that answers your question. So that this whole chapter 2 is all about that. It's actually about two Levitical laws specifically. One we'll get to in a second, and one being this gleaning law. So I will take a pause between each question that is longer to see if you guys have any follow-up questions to that. So any questions about gleaning or about that Levitical law or what Ruth was doing in the fields or any of that stuff? And if my husband is watching now, if I could ask him if he could bring me water. I don't know if he is, but I'll take a gamble. Usually I bring my water in here, but I forgot it. Okay. You guys good? Okay. This is actually, the next question actually also has to do with gleaning also, but this is a shorter answer. So the question is this, and I'll type into the chat box what I need to. Was Ruth originally gathering grain to feed herself and Naomi, or was she doing it to receive money? Why does Ruth want to pick up stalks of grain? So these are 3 different questions that you guys asked. Oh, thanks. There's a water bottle. Yay. And the last one, is Naomi incapable of gathering grain for herself, or is Ruth just doing a kind deed? So this is kind of expanding on this question of what Ruth is doing in the field. So 1, she's doing it to feed herself and Naomi. So for sure have that down. What is she doing? Why does she want to pick up stalks of grain? Same kind of deal. That's why. And then, is Naomi incapable of gathering? Yeah, it is still verse 2. It's just I put it in a separate question for some reason because I think that they're a little bit different. This is hard work. Like, I mean, it's field work. Working in a field, in the hot sun, all day long. And we've already established Naomi is pretty dang old, probably around 70 or so. We said the youngest she could be was like 65, but she could definitely be much older. She could be 80, 85, whatever. So yeah, she should not be out, bending over, standing up a million times in a row, picking up grains in the field all day long. Like, that would be bad for her. So yes, she is not really able to do that. If she didn't have Ruth, she would have to, but then there's a possibility of it being dangerous for her too. So Ruth is doing it for her and Naomi. Okay, now we are moving on. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, and the next question is about verse 4. Although we should pay attention to the fact that it says she departed and went and gleaned field after the reapers, and it says she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz. She did not know. Ruth did not know that she was going to Boaz's field until later. They just knew that, okay, this guy exists, but they did not know that that's the field that she was on. So verse 4. The question is, why did Boaz have him and his servants do the call and response in the morning? Okay, so when he says, may the Lord be with you and may the Lord bless you, this is just part of the story. It is essentially just revealing a few things about who Boaz is. It says he's a man of honor, a man of wealth, a man like a nobleman, or whatever, all these different things about him. So there's 3 things. Actually, I'm going to type that into the chat box for you guys. So call and response with servants. Well, they're like workers. It's not like they have to stay there. Okay, servants, workers, why? Okay, so this is very shorthand for the question that you guys asked. If you want to ask the question longer, it's fine, but you can just copy and paste what I wrote in the chat box. So why does he do this? There's 3 things that this reveals about Boaz. First one, he practices his Jewish faith very seriously. He takes his faith seriously. He says, may the Lord be with you. And then they say, may the Lord bless you. So he is wishing God's favor upon his workers. He's treating them with kindness. He's treating them with respect. He's treating them like people, not just, like tools. So, for his own benefit. So his character is revealed in that. And him practicing his Jewish faith. Second, it does show that Boaz is a good man and cares about his workers. So again, like I was kind of getting into the first part, he treats them with dignity as human beings, not just people who exist only for his own gain. And then thirdly, it reveals that his workers care about him too. They respect him, since they actually say this back. So that's really what that exchange is for. It's revealing who Boaz is, what kind of man he is, his faith, things like that. That was a good question. That was cool that you guys took note of that little part there. Okay, cool. Good with number 3? I guess it's not number 3. There's no numbers here. Will this be uploaded as a video after? Yep, as always. Always, always. Okay, we skip down for a little bit. Ruth asks to stay in the field, and the workers tell him, yeah, she's been here all day long. So then we get to verse 8. So then Boaz is talking to Ruth. He finds her and he talks to her. So if you're taking numbers, this is technically number 4. Cool. Okay, so the question is, why was Boaz immediately compassionate towards her without any hesitation? Okay, if you look a few verses back, he asks who she is, and he learns who she is. He had not seen this woman before. His workers had to tell him who she was. And that is in verse 5. He asks, whose woman is this? Like, who is this lady? And then in verse 6, they explain, hey, this is the girl who came with Naomi from Moab. Now he knows who she is. Again, this is not a super big town or a super big city necessarily. The whole, if you look back or think back to chapter 1, it said the whole town was stirred because of them. They all were like, oh my gosh, it's Naomi and this random lady, and who's this person, and where's your husband, and where are your sons? Like, this is like town gossip, kind of. Not necessarily in a bad way, because it's not like they're necessarily saying anything bad about Naomi, but kind of more like, ooh, wow, it sucks for her. But they do know about Ruth, this Moabitess woman who came back with Naomi. Like, that's very strange. Repeat the question and the verse. Oh my gosh, I didn't type it in. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Oh, Emily did it for me. Thank you. Why was Boaz immediately compassionate towards Ruth without any hesitation? Thank you. Yeah, that is why. He did not know who she was. He asked who she was, found out who she was. Mind blown. Oh my goodness, this is the woman I've heard about who came from Moab without her husband to be with this poor old Jewish lady. They all know who Ruth is. She has built quite a reputation, and a good one, especially amongst people who take their Jewish faith very seriously, because it has to do very deeply with the fact that Ruth is following this Jewish God, like coming back to a Jewish land. We've already established that fact. So he knew what she had been through too. He knew that she had been through the death of her husband, all of these different things, that now she really has no means of taking care of herself and providing for her and Naomi. So yes, if he is a good man and he is a Jewish man and he is a man of God and cares, he immediately wants to show her kindness like Ruth showed to Naomi. And he actually will mention that later in the chapter or later in the book. He will say, you have been so kind. And remember, Naomi is a relative of his. He's not dumb. He knows that. So in his mind, he's thinking, my kinsman, my relative Naomi, this woman who is a foreigner came and has stuck with her. Like, oh my goodness. So now he's kind of paying it forward in that way and immediately caring for her and letting her have extra grain and eat the bread and hang out with his, paid workers and things like that. But that is a great question. So hopefully that answers that. Any further questions on that? There's another separate question on verse 8 that someone else asked. So you guys can, shout out whatever in the chat box if you want to. If you need me to slow down or you need something reiterated, feel free to do that, like always. Someone else asked about verse 8. Boaz separates Ruth from the other men by placing her behind the woman. Is this sexism? And then someone else asked, why would she be in danger if she worked in a different field? Okay, so first, no, it's not sexism. It's protection. Hopefully his workers aren't like shady guys, hopefully, but you have a lot of workers in the field. You can't necessarily know them all super personally. He's placing her behind the women so that these men won't be like, ooh, who's that chick? Like, let's try to talk to her and be weird. I know it's 2020, but it's kind of still similar in that way then. So he is placing her around the women so the women will protect her. The women who are also paid workers there or who are more regular gleaners. He just wants her to not be singled out by the men and be given unwanted and possibly inappropriate attention. So it's not sexism, it's protection. It's like godly protection. Then the second part of that question for verse 8, why would she be in danger if she worked a different field? Because sometimes on other fields that weren't run by as valiant men as Boaz, the young men workers would take advantage of the young women workers or young women gleaners who were coming to glean the field. That was something that did happen. And that's one of the things that God would punish, that he was not down with. He was like, you guys are taking advantage of each other, you're treating each other and ruining each other's dignity. So Boaz knew that his field was safer for Ruth rather than going to another field that she, didn't know these people. So it was actually kind of dangerous. So those are two really good questions too. So I will type it in the text box, the question I just answered, just so you guys have it. So is it sexism for Boaz to put Ruth with the women and not men? And that was the first part. And then the second part is why would, this keyboard is big, she be in danger if she went to, I can't type, another field. Okay, so those are the two questions that we just answered. Okay, I don't know what number this is. I don't know if Emily or someone's keeping track. But in verse 11, it says that Boaz replied to her, all you've done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been reported to me. So like I said, it explicitly says that he knows about what had happened. The question then is, where did Boaz hear about Ruth? He just has heard about her. He says it's been reported to him. He makes it very, very clear that he knows about her. The second part of that question is, how had Boaz gotten the news about Naomi doing what she did after her husband died? Again, pretty much everyone already knew. So if you didn't take notes about this concept earlier right now, then take it right now. Where did Boaz hear about Ruth? The whole town knew about Ruth. Everyone knew about Ruth. It was like, again, she had a reputation, and it was a good one, specifically, because she was so kind to Naomi, and she left her family and her friends and all this stuff and came to the Jewish community and had been living as a Jew and acting as a Jew. So that is how, it was a big deal. Word would travel fast. Travels fast now, travel fast then, too. Okay, so that was, we're over halfway done. That was verse 11. Don't know what number, because it doesn't matter to me if you have numbers or not. Okay. Skipping down to verse 14. Oh, this is a quick and easy question. This is about bread and wine vinegar. Like, you guys were basically like, what the heck? That sounds gross. So the question is, was having bread dipped in wine vinegar a special treat or something only the wealthy would normally enjoy? The second person asked, why is sour wine given as bread dipping? Well, sour wine is like a weird translation of wine vinegar. So we still have wine vinegar, like olive oil and vinegar. You go to a fancy restaurant, you will dip your bread in olive oil and vinegar. Like, that's a normal thing. So yeah, it was kind of a special treat, but it wasn't like super outlandish. It was kind of normal, but it definitely tastes better than just eating grain. So yeah, he was like giving her something extra, but it wasn't as like gross as maybe it sounds in the text. It was kind of normal. Okay, that was verse 14. We got 3 left. Cool. Okay, verse 15. Oh, not 3. Sorry, 5. I'm bad at math. Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, this is verse 15. I'll put it in the text box in a sec. I wasn't sure what Boaz meant by telling the workers not to embarrass her. How would she be embarrassed? Okay, so this is actually a good question because it has to do with translation. So verse 15, what did Boaz mean when he told the workers not to embarrass Ruth? I spelled embarrass wrong. Sorry, guys. You can fix it. Okay. So there are different translations. Other versions, ESV says reproach, to not treat her with reproach. What this is trying to say is, like, don't embarrass her by questioning her a bunch, telling her to leave, making fun of her, bothering her, really. Because imagine, you're a girl who is new to this land. You're a foreigner. You're just trying to keep to yourself, mind your own business, get some grain here and stuff for you and your mother-in-law, and random dudes keep pestering you. Like, you might feel a little bit embarrassed. Asking all these questions, wondering what should I say, what should I not say? Like, I'm trying to just keep to myself and mind my own business. So he's telling them just to leave her alone. Whether or not she would be embarrassed or whatever, he's saying, don't tell her to go away. Don't ask her who she is. Don't, because again, her reputation preceded her. So she knows people know about her, but like, when that's the case, you don't really want to keep talking about it. So they're just saying, leave her alone. Let her do her thing. Don't embarrass her. Don't question her. Don't rebuke her or whatever. So there's different words for that, but that is what that means. Okay. That is verse 15. Verse 16 says, Also, you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles and leave it that she may glean and do not rebuke her. So, verse 16, it has to do again with Boaz talking to his workers. Why does Boaz order the harvesters to pick up barley only to... Oh, I spelled barley wrong. Oh, sorry, guys. Drop it. Let me try to fix that. There's my hand. This is not my computer. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is this person's question word for word. Why does Boaz order the harvesters to pick up barley only to drop it? They're not picking it up only to drop it. They're picking it up and dropping some of it so that she doesn't have to work as hard, basically, to get the grain. So he's just saying leave a little bit extra for her, knowing, again, that she's not just gleaning for herself, but for her and her mother-in-law, and that she, doesn't have means of providing for herself. He is just going the extra mile and saying, also, by the way, why don't you leave a little extra? Like you would let, someone win at a game if you know they're having a hard day. I don't know. That's a good analogy. But it's kind of like that. Saying, hey, why don't you just help her out a little bit? Don't make her work as hard. Okay. Verses... Now we have 4, but the last one is kind of easy. Verses 15 and 16. So this is a longer question. I'm just going to read out the question that you guys asked specifically, but you're not going to have to write this out. Don't worry. So the person asked, why is Boaz so almost overwhelmingly kind to Ruth? In prior verses, he had already extended the hand of friendship and protection for Ruth, yes, which a good man would have done for any hardworking woman in his field. Maybe, but maybe not. Some Jewish men were amazing and honorable and loved God, and some were super shady. But then in these verses, he continues to show even more specific kindness beyond the point of normality. Okay, I do appreciate this person picking that up, though. That, yeah, he keeps doing this, and then this, and then this, and going above and beyond. So why would he be doing this? Okay, so there's 3 things. Why? I'll work this out. Why is... oh, thanks, Sequoia. Okay, so Sequoia is going to put it in the chat box. Awesome, thank you. Basically, why is he giving banana special attention to her? There's a few things. One, we've already established he's a man of God. So you definitely need to have that. It's very clear all over this chapter, let alone the entire book. So he's a man of God. 2, he has heard about the kindness that Ruth has shown to Naomi, and he wants to pay it back, pay it forward. So he wants to... I don't know if this ever happened to you guys, you're in line for Starbucks and the person in front of you just pays for your drink. That's happened to me quite a few times. And then I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm paying for the person behind me then. So it's kind of like that. He's like, okay, we're trying to live for the God of Israel. We're trying to show the kindness that God has given us. Look at this woman, the kindness she has shown Naomi. How can I then show her God's kindness through my actions? He wants her to feel God's kindness too, like we as Christians do for other people. We want people to feel the love of Jesus. We've been comforted by the Holy Spirit. We want to comfort those people too. So it's that same kind of thing. So he wants her to feel God's kindness through him, very specifically. 3rd, Naomi is his relative. So even more so, if you know that someone cared for someone you love, or even a distant relative, you're like, oh, I'm related to that person. And I heard that this person was really kind to someone who is biologically or technically close to me. I think they're, related by blood, because Elimelech was his actual blood relative and Naomi was his wife, So even more so, he's realizing, okay, I actually kind of have an obligation to care for these people, at least a little bit, to care about their well-being, so I'm going to care for them. Can you say the 3 points again? Yes. So that's what I was just done there. So 3 things. 1, he's a man of God, and he wants to show, he's just a man of God. He wants to show kindness in general. 2, specifically who Ruth is, he wants to show kindness because the fact that she's a foreigner and she has done so much for Naomi, he wants to then go above and beyond in that way and pay it forward. 3, Naomi is his relative. So he still wants to care for Naomi through Ruth in that way. And so he knows that they're living together. He knows that Ruth is continuing to provide for Naomi. So then he's giving her even more than normal. So those are the 3 main points why he would care for her this much. Hopefully that makes sense. And we will see how that continues in the next chapter. So, okay. We got 3 left, barely. In verse 19, Ruth comes back, and Naomi's response... Wait, I'm going to read this specifically. Okay, so she says, Naomi says, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So the question is, okay, verse 19. How did Naomi know that a man had taken notice of Ruth? Okay, how would Naomi know this? Because she came back with a bonkers amount of grain. Like, way more than normal gleaning would produce. Way, way more. Not to mention the leftovers of the lunch that they had eaten, with the workers and stuff. So much. She brought back so much food that she's like, okay, who took notice of you? Where were you? What happened? She can tell. There's some different movies of it, but I don't know if it's in another chapter or something that says she put it in her apron or in her dress or something, coming back with all this grain. It's a lot. So she can tell. And then she says, she told her mother-in-law with whom she'd worked, and the name of it, the man who I worked with is Boaz. So then Naomi kind of flips out. So then that's when we go into verse 20. So that's verse 19. How did she know? She could tell because of how much food she had brought back. So verse 20. Someone asks, Naomi calls Boaz one of their guardian redeemers. I understand the guardian part, but not really what makes him a redeemer. So this is going to be a key point in this whole chapter. We will touch on it now, but we will touch on it again and again and again. Because on your test and other things that you'll do, this is literally one of the most important parts and points of the entire book of Ruth, is this concept of kinsman redeemer or guardian redeemer. So I'm going to read what Naomi says. I'm going to write in the question in the chat. So verse 20. What does it mean to be a guardian, or some versions say kinsman? Redeemer. Okay, and that's just paraphrasing this person's question where she says, yeah, I understand the guardian part, but what makes him a redeemer? Okay, so here is the verse. The verse says, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, this is verse 20, may he be blessed of the Lord who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead. Who is the dead that Naomi is referring to, that Boaz is showing kindness to? Elimelech, who is his blood relative. Again, Naomi said to her, the man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives. So this closest relative, other versions might say one of our kinsmen, one of our closest kinsmen. So we'll get to that in a second. Verse 21, Ruth the Moabitess said, furthermore, he said to me, you shall stay. So she's just going on about how nice he was. And then Naomi just encourages her, stay with this guy. Keep going to his field. He's a good dude. This is really great. And then someone asked in verse 20, is Naomi starting to get hopeful again? Is this a turning point in the story? Yes, very, very, very much so. It is a huge turning point in the story. Naomi is absolutely starting to get hopeful again, because she's seeing what's happening with Ruth and Boaz, and how Boaz is taking attention to her, in a very, very provisionary way, in a helpful way. So now we'll go back to this concept of guardian redeemer. So this is the one that I typed into the box. So this whole thing about kinsman redeemer. The concept of kinsman redeemer is a law in the Old Testament, and it shows up all over the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, I think probably again in Judges, but Deuteronomy and Leviticus for sure, a bunch of times. There's a few things that come along with this, some that you guys might find kind of weird, but what I want you to take notes on today is this verse, or this word, redeem. What that word redeem means, we've talked about in class quite a bit. It means to buy back or set free by paying a price. So you'll have that in your notes, to buy back or set free by paying a price. We've talked about this before, so this shouldn't be necessarily new to you. So if someone is a redeemer, that means that they have the power or the ability or the means, legal or otherwise, to do this, to redeem something, to buy it back and then set it free, but they have to pay a price to do so. So when they talk about Boaz being a redeemer of theirs, that means that he is someone who is able, if he's willing, to buy back and set free not only Ruth and Naomi and what's going on with them, but the land that they still had left in Moab that they kind of, just left, and amongst potentially other things, maybe a field, maybe livestock, I don't know, but different things that they had. But definitely they had land for sure. And that this person, as one of their kinsman redeemers, he is able to, by paying a price, buy back that land that was held, by the Jewish, I don't know, state is the correct term, but basically that was unable to be inhabited. And Naomi and Ruth didn't have any family. They didn't have anyone to be able to provide for them, especially not any men that could do what they needed to do to protect them for the rest of their years, of life. So when they talk about Boaz, then that's kind of a big deal if he's willing to do this. And so not only he's able to claim their land and give it back to them, but also take care of them and his family. And it is actually his duty. And there's kind of like a line. It would go, if a widow, if her husband had a brother, it's like his responsibility to then marry her, as in take her as his wife, and basically make sure that she is taken care of, she's provided for. I know this sounds weird for us today, but that's because women have a lot more means of providing for themselves than they did in, ancient Near Eastern culture of all of them, not just Jewish culture. It was the same in many of the other cultures as well, too. So it was a responsibility. If he didn't, she could go to the Jewish council and say, hey, this guy's not willing to do it. Like, now they have to provide someone for her. So she basically isn't just screwed and, starves to death. So that she actually has a family and is able to figure out how to produce sons and carry on the family name and other things that were important to the Jewish community. So it is this person's duty. But I think at some point, I don't think it's in here. Okay, another point, we will learn that Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, but he's not the closest kinsman redeemer. So we'll figure out what that means later. But he is one of those people. So the point is that the fact that he even exists means that Ruth and Naomi are probably going to be okay. And that is why Naomi is so excited, because they have randomly run into their kinsman redeemer, and it seems like he is taking a liking to Ruth. We don't know how far that goes. We just know he's being very nice to her right now. Doesn't necessarily mean it's romantic. We'll see how the story goes. But she is excited, because if the relationship and the friendship continues, that could be very good for them. So that is the last question. Like I said, that one was a bit longer. If you guys have any more questions about the chapter in general, you can ask them here. There was a few that we didn't get to because some of them are actually related to chapter 3. So again, as a reminder, what you're going to be doing for the rest of this assignment, all of the questions that we went over today should go underneath your own observations and your own questions, unless, of course, your question that you asked on your first assignment was answered, then your answer would go there. And then you will just resubmit. This assignment now, that was worth 15 points, is going to be worth 25 points. I've already graded those of you who turned it in by the due date, by the due time also, and you've got points for that. The rest of the points are just going to be added on, so you're not having to submit a new assignment into Schoology. It's just the same assignment, it's just worth more points now. So whatever your points were before, you'll keep that, and then it will be added on 10 more from the notes that you took today. So hopefully, was my last one related to chapter 3? Just for my notes. I don't know which one your last one was, because I copied them and paste them all into a separate document so that I don't know. But Sequoia, I'll take a look at yours and I can answer it in like an email or something. So, and anyone else who I didn't get to, if you would still like your question answered, I will either tell you we'll answer it another time, or I can just answer it myself. But I took the ones that I believed were important for you guys to know for this chapter. So, yep. Any last questions? Otherwise, we are going to sign off. I actually learned, I think, how to stop streaming here instead of having to run and go get my husband to do it. So we'll do that. And if you have any questions, obviously you guys can email me too. So, all right. Bye.